All right, let's start out by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Ruach Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Thou That Dwellest in the Clefts of the Rock. Now, pretty much this is a title, or actually, I'm joined with the Elder Khanak.
Shalom.
And pretty much this is a title that popped in my head last night before I went to bed. That scripture in the Obadiah popped in my head. And, there's certain scriptures and prophecies, that are important to know because it helps you to link, particular peoples with biblical characters. And see, this is what the Christian church can't do. This is what most of these, apologists or other so-called Christians refuse to do, because they'll paint the picture as to pretty much, almost seems like I'm just putting it in a roundabout way, that the people of the Bible really don't exist anymore. It's almost like don't worry about those old names. This is what we're called today, so they don't link people back to the Bible. The only thing they use the Bible for is a false narrative that all people can use. But when you understand certain prophecies and certain events and people in the scriptures, you get a better idea. What's that? Okay, you get a better idea as to who's who. We got somebody behind us. You get a better idea as to who's who. Because if anyone out there says that the people of the world today do not link to one of the three sons of Noah, then they don't know what the hell is going on. They're just bugged out, ignorant, or they're agents, agents of chaos. Have you got a precept?
You was going to go to Obadiah?
Yep, we're going to start off there. So this is why it's important. This is why the scriptures say wisdom is a principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all I get understanding. Excuse me. And everyone on the planet, is not a prophet. Really, like years ago, Elder Pastor made a statement at the school in Connecticut. He said that the Bible pretty much is a prophet's book. I'm just paraphrasing what he said from what I can remember. He said, really, the only people qualified to teach the Bible are the prophets. And that's true. You have prophets, you have apostles, prophets, teachers, and these are the only ones that are really qualified to teach this Bible. And what we know of the Most High, Yahweh, and His Son Yahushai is they use weak things, foolish things of this world to confound things that are wise. So your so-called curriculum and ways that, this world teaches people that, how that the Lord is dealing with you and this, that, and the other is based off of credentials that you get from the devil.
Quick precept.
Bring it out.
Amos 3:7. Surely the Lord power will do nothing.
Beautiful.
But He revealeth His secret unto His servants, the prophets.
Right. So surely the Lord power will do nothing, but He revealeth His secrets unto His servants, the prophets. Why? Number one, to exalt the names of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And number two, to let and establish to the world who He's dealing with. Because the Lord is dealing with somebody down here. And everyone that has the Bible does not understand the Bible. That's why that old dude, I just call him old dude, that came by the camp last night in the wheelchair was talking all that shit. Because there's many Bibles. Yeah, there's many Bibles out there, but what's your point? And when the brother started going into the scriptures, the elder Corner, he just started pretty much bugging out.
He didn't want the scripture to come out. Which shows you how powerful the scripture is when you read it in its proper context.
That's right.
And it's at the right time, the right scripture at the right time.
That's it. Because it's all about timing. Everything is all about timing. The Most High deals with time. Time and chance happening to all men. Everything is about timing, and everything is reflective of going back to the scriptures of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai to prove your position, to prove your statements. You know, and that's the measuring stick, which these Christians that call themselves Christians refuse to do. They don't want to go back to scriptures. They want to see what's in your mind. That's why when you start going into the scriptures and cutting them, what's the first thing they do? You know, what's on? I want to talk to you. Now put the book down. I want to talk to you.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, first of all, what I got to say is what the scriptures got to say. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of the Most High.
So I'm here in Obadiah. I'm going to start at the top.
Yes, sir.
It says, the vision of Obadiah, thus said the Lord power concerning Edom.
And this is, you know, a book, one chapter long, dedicated to the Edomites. And this book is very powerful and important to understand so that we can know the traits and some of the evidence that's presented scripturally of who these Edomites are. Because even the scholars that have done, you know, research in the scriptures, they've even figured out that the only people that are written about in the scriptures that will never promise any form of mercy are the Edomites.
Yep, that's it.
So why did they come to that conclusion? Because they searched the scriptures and they found out that these people are not going to receive any mercy from the Most High. And that's why the world is running away from who the Edomites are. Namely, the so-called elite banking families, which are Amalek, the Amalekites. You know, they're running away from who the Edomites are, and they're trying to place who the Edomites are on everybody else except for themselves.
That's it.
And when people expose them, they label them anti-Sem because that's the only weapon that they have, you know? And even when you dig deep enough, you find out that they themselves came out of the caves, you know? Which the Edomites came out of the caves, but they came out of the caves going back to the Khazarian Empire, you see? And that information, when it came out, was very damaging to the narrative of who these people are today. That's why, you know, they had to ramp up their anti-Sem rhetoric. They had to demonize and so-called debunk the information that they are indeed Khazars. Mm-hmm. Because they know that will link them back to who the Edomites are.
Yep, it says, we have heard a rumor from the Lord, an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Right,
and that ambassador, when you go back, is dealing with the Egyptian premier who was the Ishmaelite by the name of Gamal Abdel Nasser. And he's the one that was rallying those other Muslim countries, you know, back in the 60s to come against Esau. Because remember, 60s played a pivotal time frame when the truth started to be exposed heavily. You know, so when that happened, that was to stir up the pot, you know, because he understood that those people were not the people of the Lord. He even made a statement, I believe it was in 1956. He said, I can't respect those people in the land of Israel today because they left black and came back white. So basically, he said, in the roundabout way, he said, those are not the people. Mm-hmm. So he was the one that rallied. When you do the research, he rallied those so-called Muslim countries, you know, to come against the land of Israel, but they got smacked down. Why? Because prophecy-wise, these people are supposed to be there in that land so that they can be destroyed.
It says, arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle.
And that's exactly what he did. He mustered up, you know, those different Muslim countries to come against, you know, the small hats, you know. But like I said, it was a 6-day war or something like that. It didn't last that long, you know, but the point was that he was the main character to gather that up. Sometimes when you read prophecy, it's dealing with one particular character. Sometimes it's dealing with a nation, you know.
Mm-hmm. Behold, verse 2, behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised.
So what does it mean he made him small among the heathen? Meaning insignificant. And although they deceive the world to believe that they are these great people, we're coming to find out, and the world is coming to find out, that these devils are nothing. Nothing but thieves, murderers, cutthroats, rapists, pillagers, just all out taking what's not theirs, but then using deceptive tactics to do that. They're going into people's lands and going to the leaders and, trying to twist the arms of these leaders to give contracts to American corporations to set up businesses in their land to so-called bring jobs for the people of those lands. But all the while, it's just to funnel their resources back to America, which when you funnel things back to America, you're funneling things to the international bankers.
That's it. And also to destroy the people by their wine, by their philosophy, to weaken them through their philosophy, so they can have them under their rule forever. So that's how because now it's no more put chains on people. You put chains on their mind.
Right.
And ultimately now he's going to try to finish that off with the digital chain. Okay, that's what it's all about. But you have to weaken the strong man first. You got to bind the strong man first.
Yep.
So you have to bring these countries to the table by crashing them.
Yep.
By messing up the people's minds, by having the men and women fight each other, by having people not know what a man is, know what a woman is.
Right.
By taking them away from their old ways and giving them a new way,
yep,
which pollutes them.
That's it. And he mentioned digital, right? Because I thought economic chains, it's no coincidence you got something called blockchain. So pretty much this is what they want. They want to put the yoke of economic pressure on the world. That's why everyone's moving to a digital currency, but yet everyone is supposed to be enemies against each other, but all nations are moving into a digital direction.
I got a quick precept.
Bring it out.
Habakkuk 2:4. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him.
And why is he lifted up? Because of that pride. Go ahead. And he's not upright because he's the wicked.
But the just shall live by his faith.
But the just shall live by his faith. That's dealing with the elect of the nation of Israel. Because in America, 2/3 of Jake, they don't have faith. And they're not going to be delivered. That's why they constantly keep fighting against this truth. That's why my man with the rat fur mink came up, in his souped up, wheelchair. And then when the brother said, that's why the Lord put you in a wheelchair, he jumped out the wheelchair. So show you that these people are phonies. Riding around in a wheelchair because you're too goddamn lazy to walk. Now he was in pretty decent shape for an old dude.
The eyes may seem, the flesh may seem, but most of these people, they got about 15 ailments that's bothering them daily.
Yep.
And they have to daily medicate, whether it's with prescription drugs or street drugs.
Dang.
Just so they can be regular. That's their normal.
Yep.
But when those things start getting taken away, you're going to see them demons just jump out of them.
Dang.
Woo. It's verse 5. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man.
Right, and that's a part of that. That's that wine. That's a part of their philosophies, a part of their, ways, that America pushes on the world for them to accept immorality in order to receive benefits. You see, and all the rulers of these nations are complicit with it. How do we know? Well, did you go? Have you been to these meetings? Well, I've been to the meeting of the Lord that he gave to us through the scriptures. How about that? The prophecy. It said that the kings of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of a fornication. That's enough for me.
Well, you can see that actually playing out in real life. They have, these world summits. They have these G8s, G12s. They have the World Economic Forum.
That's it.
They have the United Nations.
Yep.
Right? They have the World Health Organization.
Yep.
Everything is globalized.
Beautiful.
And what happens? You have the leaders that come down and they'll sit. All right, they'll sit all together. But who's really in control? It's the so-called white man. He's really in control. And then you can look at their traditions.
Yep.
They're moving away from their traditions. They're structuring their society based upon the Edomite way.
Yep.
They're wearing suits. They have high rises. Their women are going to college. The women are independent. The men are becoming sodomites. Okay, they want American food. They're eating burgers and pizza
and
fries. You see what I'm saying? You know, they've and then a lot of them, what do? They come over to America to enjoy the benefits of America, to enjoy the freedom. Okay.
Well,
the technology. Where did they get that technology to build up their society?
That's it.
They got it from the so-called white man. China was built up by the so-called white man.
That's
propped up. Okay.
That's it. Go to Revelation 17 and 18. You know, because these are keys. You know, and the Lord's treasure chest. You know, different pinpoints and different hints, mysterious hints. You know, that the Lord said, surely the Lord power will do nothing, but he revealeth the secrets unto his servants and prophets. So like the brother said, you have, all these nations coming together, their leaders, to hammer out, these different policies, and figure out the best solution for each nation. But who's running that? Esau's running that. Go ahead, read that. And then I'm going to hit another point, Lord's will.
Revelation 17:16. You said 16?
18.
18, excuse me. Revelation 17:18. And the woman which thou sawest is the great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth.
Right. So sometimes when you read scriptures, the scriptures are direct, straightforward, and sometimes they're symbolic. So this woman that the Apostle John saw, that the Lord showed him, that he admired wonderfully at, he was taken by her beauty. It was a representation of a particular city. That's why in Isaiah 14 it calls it the golden city, because that golden city is very alluring, but the thing is, it's not really a golden city. You see, it's gold plated.
Yep.
And it has the illusion of being a gold city. So this woman and that gold city would do what? Attract people to it, nations to it, leaders to it. They all want to partake, in this advancement, or this making money and becoming greater and greater as a nation. So it's very alluring, like this woman. And it said that she reigns over the kings of the earth. There's no coincidence that the so-called white man is running this thing, but where they running it from? They're running it from America, Babylon the Great. And the UN building, United Nations, where they all come, however many times a year for meetings. We're going straight or straight. They are pretty much, come to where? America. Don't the nations of the earth have a problem with America? Death to America and all this stuff they be saying. Yankee, get out of my land, go home. So what are the nations, their leaders doing here? And the actual UN building that's supposed to be for all nations is sitting on American soil, which they call so-called international land, but nevertheless it's still on the soils of America.
Well, the world's reserve currency.
Yep.
If you want to trade globally, you have to convert your currency into US dollars.
Yeah.
So that just shows you who reigns supreme, okay, which is America. America has the hegemony. Now it's falling away, it's crumbling, but nevertheless,
still there.
It's still there, okay? Yep. It's still there, according to prophecy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, that's right. So we could go Habakkuk again.
Yep, Habakkuk 2:5, yea, also, because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man.
And then when you go back to Revelation 17, it also speaks about that cup. And then they put in that cup to the people's mouths of the nations, really their leaders, and saying, look, you got to drink this and cause your people to drink this, or else you ain't going to be able to function as a nation. All right? And that's all done through the international banking families using the patsy America.
Yeah, well, how do you drink? You drink from the head, the mouth. So the head is speaking about the leaders.
Yep.
So you drink from the mouth, and the rest of the body, it absorbs that
Yep.
and moves. So they control the head first, then the government, the controlling of the mind.
Yep.
Then the people follow suit. They're not going to go to each individual person.
No.
They're not going to do that. They're going to go to the heads
Yep.
to allow them to push their advertisement, allow them to push their food, to get on certain deals.
Yep.
Allow them to bring in American corporations.
Yep.
Allow them to take over their social media, to
Yep.
basically social engineer the people,
Yeah.
to steer the people in their direction, in their way.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's all backfiring on these other nations. What the scripture say, the nations are angry.
Yep.
You know,
Drunk of the wine before they're angry.
they're drunk and they're enraged and anger because they're suffering the consequences of that wine.
Right.
You know, they thought it was just some high level wine, and the whole time it was mixed and mingled with all type of poisonous substance.
Yep.
To lower your guard down. Okay.
You know,
Yep.
and then the leaders have a cabinet. You know, and the leaders give the orders to the cabinet, and the cabinet have, you know, subordinates under them, and this is how they push the propaganda among the people. You know, to accept these things, to accept these issues.
Yep. It says, yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home.
Right. These devils don't keep at home. They're all over the planet. You know, and that pretty much plays into the part of Cain. You know, a fugitive and a vagabond shalt thou be in the earth. And that's exactly the role that they're playing, the role of a vagabond. Now, a vagabond is not a homeless person. A vagabond, another word in the scriptures, is a wayfaring man. A wayfaring man is one person, a person that's here and constantly moving from place to place. And that's what Esau does. He moves from place to place, strategically placing his militaries, you know, in place, certain places.
His church, his religious, just to land back up on you.
No, get down.
He places his militaries,
Mm-hmm.
his might, but he also places his religion,
Boom.
his Christianity, his Catholicism, and usually that's how he comes first.
Yep.
He comes with, you know, he comes, you know, in peace, so-called, with religion. Hey, we're gonna save you.
Yep.
And then he'll come with the sword right after that, you know, to get you. That's
Fucking
the
devil.
MO of the devil.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you see these nations,
Yep.
you'll see Catholicism, you'll see Christianity, you'll see his religion of white Jesus. God loves everybody.
Yep.
Meanwhile, he's destroying you economically and physically.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so he gets into your environment, and then from there he takes over. It's just like you have a cage full of rats, right? And they'll put a snake in there, right? And then what happens to the snake? Just checking out the environment. He's in there, they're uncomfortable, but they eventually they get tired. There's not much they can do, and then that's when the snake strikes.
Yep.
Esau he is a snake. You know, he is an ultimate snake. He's a king snake
And a rat.
and a rat. King snake and a king rat.
Yep. It says, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell,
Yep.
and is as death.
Right, so hell is the grave. In the book of Proverbs, it says that hell is never full. So Esau is never satisfied. He has an unsatiable appetite, you know, for taking people's substances. And it's like, no matter how much he gets, he just never has enough. You know, it's like it's an addiction for them. Greed is also an addiction. Drugs are an addiction, food are an addiction, you know, but greed is also an addiction. You know, and what they do is pretty much, you know, when they have a covetous spirit of taking people's goods, taking people's resources, because they understand that paper money is not wealth, but resources are wealth. You know, and this is why they use the FRN, Federal Reserve Note, or the USD, the US dollar, to, you know, make that the standard currency to trade globally, because he knew that that would be the way to put these people in debt, these nations in debt, and then they would have to, the payment to them would be what? The lands, the resources. So ultimately he gets them through debt, you know?
It says, his desire is as hell.
I think we could go.
Okay.
We don't do the New York thing, bro.
It says, neither keepeth at home, who enlarges his desire as hell, and is as death, and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people.
Right. So he gathers unto him all nations and heapeth unto him all people. This is why you saw the woman. Matter of fact, give Revelation 17:1. It just keeps popping back up.
Let's do it.
You know, Revelation 17:1. You know, you got to understand metaphors, and you got to understand keys in the scriptures. You know, in order to be able to understand the mysteries, the jargon, of the scriptures, and because the jargon of the scriptures is a mystery. You know, this is why the scriptures speak about precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. You know, it's a puzzle. It's an enigma. You know, and the only ones that can put it together are the prophets, through the spirit and inspiration of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, not of their own, because these things are inspired. You know, and they had teachers before them. You know, we had teachers before us, so on and so forth. You know, until the Lord, perfected what began from the small hats, because when Jake started learning about being Israelites, they learned from the small hats. But then over time, from the break-offs, started to perfect and refine the truth. To where you have it right now, 100% truth.
That's it. Revelation 17:1. And there came up one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters.
Right, and who's the great whore? America. Why is she considered the great whore? Because all nations, their leaders are sleeping with her. Right, but it said that sat upon what? Many waters. So if you was to read that, you wouldn't understand. You would think, what is it, an island? Is it, like a group of islands, or what is it? So when you jump to the 15th verse, it gives you the understanding of what those seas are.
Yep, verse 15. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues.
Right. So the Lord has given us, clues as to who this woman is. He's telling us it's a city. Well, they'll say America is a country, so how could they be talking about a city? Well, a city is as big as its citizens, or a country is as big as its citizens. These are modern day labels for these lands. The land was just called earth. Mountains, hills, the earth, water, So the so-called country of America is nothing but a big city, and the average person, no matter where they're born, they could be born in Albuquerque, they could be born in San Francisco, they could be born in New York, anywhere they're born. We're going to the right? Yeah. Anywhere they're born, they're known as what? U.S. citizens. The word citizen goes back to the word city. So America is that city, because when you could be born anywhere and go to China or go to Russia or whatever the case may be, and what are you still? You're still a U.S. citizen. Mm-hmm. And the word citizen goes back to the word city. So go ahead. Yep.
And that was it on that verse.
Okay, so now let's go back to Habakkuk, because through the spirit we're cooking through the spirit.
Let's go. Habakkuk 2.
That's a series.
A series, yeah.
Cooking in the spirit.
Cooking in the spirit. That's it. Yep. Habakkuk 2:6. Shall not all these take up a parable against thee, and a taunting proverb against him?
Yep.
And say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his.
Right, and that's pretty much the consensus of these nations. This is what they're coming up. The thought that's coming to them. The consensus is that every time this devil gets into a particular country, they just totally destroy that country. They promise them liberty. They promise them rights. They promise the citizens peace and all that. But all we see is death and destruction, and the pillaging of these people's resources. So what the hell is going on?
And say, Woe to him that increaseth that which is not his. How long? And to him that ladeth himself with thick clay.
Right, they increase that which is not theirs. So they're saying, how long is it going to take? Right, and then it goes on to giving us another clue, that he that ladeth himself with thick clay, meaning they cover themselves over with what? With heavy debts. When you go back to the Hebrew word there, ibatyat, which means a heavy debt, and that heavy debt is pushed upon the planet by what? By the FRNs, Federal Reserve Notes, USD, US dollar, whatever you want to call it. The Federal Reserve System and its currency has pretty much enslaved the planet economically. And this is why these nations, are in such debt. And this is why they're looking to try to get out from the dollar, but they can't because they're in a quagmire with this. And this is why Maya Anshar Bauer said, give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes the laws, because he understood that once you control the money system, you control whatever laws go out there. Mm-hmm. The old saying, money talks, bullshit walks. Well, that's the case.
Well, yeah, that's the lifeblood of a society, is the buying and selling.
Yep.
So if you can control that, and then also understand, people and how they crave after money, mm-hmm. They crave after wealth, they crave after having, all these things at their beck and call. So with that, it's the perfect remedy to do whatever you want to a people.
Yep.
People that will sell out for money. Well, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Yeah.
And the scriptures, Yahweh Shai spoke about how the heathen, they worry about those things. What shall we drink? What shall we eat? What shall we put on?
That's right.
Our roof over our head. So they're consumed. The heathen are consumed with money and having that as a security, which money is a defense.
Yep.
And our people, they take on that same spirit. So the devil uses that against these people.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so controlling the money, setting up individuals to sell out, do things for money, and hey, you'll have these heathen nations. They'll sell out their country for cheap.
Yep.
You get a guy that's been on the bottom, and you raise him up to be a leader of a country.
Mm-hmm.
He'll take pennies.
Yeah.
He don't give a shit.
World's greatest and strongest military to back up, them finances. You have a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And this is what has happened in the world. They've been duped by this fraudulent money system, and that's why they're in such debt. And then trust and believe the international banking families understand that debt slavery leads to physical slavery. Of a people, of their lands, of their resources, of their cattle, of anything that they hold of value. It will be transferred to those who hold sway and power over your debts. Give me Psalms 22, what is that, 6? No, 7.
Proverbs?
Yep, Proverbs 22 and 7. So they know that if they have people in debt, that would be the power that they need over those peoples to take over their lands, resources, so on and so forth.
Proverbs 22 and 7, the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender.
Right, because pretty much in essence, what these devils are doing is, lending to the people of the world. And the ones that are borrowing it are the ones that are put in debt. And they're going to be forever indebted to them. This is why they want to bring in the digital system with the micro C-HIP, which is the MOTB, because that is an ultimate form of control, and that is an ultimate form of a debt slave. That will be indebted for life, because in the Old Testament, when you wanted to be a servant for life, you had to have something physical, pushed into your ear, to, let the world know what master you belong to perpetually. Mm-hmm. And that's what that micro C-HIP is all about. It's all about making perpetual slaves of the earth, for those that have put the world into debt, into slavery debt, by this Federal Reserve note.
And setting up a system of total control in which if your servant rebels, you just cut them off.
That's it.
Nobody can rebel under this system, because the whole world is on this system, and you can control them through digital. You can control masses of people through your technology.
Yep. And
shut off whole populations from being able to participate in the system of control that you have created.
Yeah.
That you have deceived them into thinking that it was for their benefit.
Yeah.
It's right. The ultimate plan.
That's it. Yeah, and then when the slaves would get uppity, what would they do? They would put a yoke around them, right? And that yoke that they put around them would have bells on it. So if the slave tried to escape, no matter where they ran to, the bells would ring. So that's what that, because that was what a yoke is slavery. So when they have this device in you, you can't hide. They could turn it off, or if you try to, go another route, what's going to happen is, they're going to, because that's another, that's another see here, is to be able to track people, GPS.
Well, didn't Nate say that?
Yeah.
So yeah, where you can go. That's a slave. If you have a slave, you tell the slave what to eat, what not to eat.
Yep.
To go dictate everything to that slave. That's your property.
Yeah.
So that's all going to be built into this MOTB.
Yeah.
Okay, and the blockchain, like you said earlier, that's part of the system of control. It's nothing but a digital chain.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's part of that yoke.
So
there was another point, but it just kind of escaped me. Well, go ahead.
We're done in Proverbs.
All right, so let's go back to let's go back to Obadiah.
Okay.
Yeah, Obadiah. Yeah. So we can hit the points there.
Yep. This is Obadiah, verse 4. Well, let me start reading verse 3 again.
Yeah.
It says, "The heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the cleft of the rock."
Right, and in the book of Jeremiah, I think it's 50, it speaks about, Babylon, which is Babylon the Great, being most proud. And these devils are the most proud. I mean, you got Moab that's and Ammon, they kind of up it, but Esau's the most proud. Oh, that's what I want to say too. The elder was speaking, about, the scriptures don't say in vain that Esau wants to be like the Most High. The Most High knows where all his creation is, whether they're Israelites, heathens, or whatever. He knows where everybody is, because all spirits are connected back to the Father. He is the Father of spirits. This is what Esau wants to take the place of the Most High.
Yep.
That's how bugged out this devil is.
Yeah, that's a bugged out thought.
Yeah.
None of the nations really had that thought outside of Esau.
Yep.
And in his mind, he finally has the ability to do it, through his technology.
Yep.
Which is nothing other than left-hand magic.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it is, witchcraft. Because witchcraft does work, but there comes a time where the Most High don't allow it to work.
Yep.
And that's the time we're coming into. Well, even his deception, he's been able to deceive all the nations. Well, yeah, it worked for a moment. We were deceived, but the Most High shows you that he's control of everything. He's a mind of understanding.
Yeah.
All right, to be able to even see through the devil's plan, to understand that we're Israelites, and then have the spirit to continue to keep teaching without wavering. Okay.
Yeah, well, the Lord also said, he said, if it were possible, they would deceive the very elect. But it's just not possible. Go ahead.
It says, though thou exalt thyself as the...
That's another clue. See, there are keys in the symbol for America is the bald eagle. The symbol of empire has been the bald eagle. You go back to Rome, you go back to Greece, you go back to Spain and all them other empires that ruled. You had, the symbol of the eagle. That's another clue as to who we're dealing with as a nation. But you gotta understand, when the book of Revelation was written in metaphors. That dragon is a conglomeration of these different nations that were coming together. And today America is a hodgepodge of all of those different major Edomite empires, bundled up into one. And it's no coincidence that America is the leader of the free world, right? Mm-hmm. And they're the leader of these nations around the world.
Yeah, they have the hegemony.
Yep.
Which I believe the word hegemony means leadership when you break it down.
Right.
They're the leader.
Yeah. It's like a large country that is a bodyguard to a smaller country. That's pretty much the word hegemony goes back to. They're like the top. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and right before Biden left office, he officially made the bald eagle the bird of America.
Beautiful.
It wasn't official, but before he left, he made it official, which is just further proof that they are the eagle that the scripture is speaking about, which identifies also identifier of who Esau would be. Okay.
And I'm glad you said that, because when you go back to I believe it was the 1700s, if I'm not mistaken, Benjamin Franklin wanted to make the turkey the American bird symbol, but they's like, nah, you know. So they decided, because indigenous or native to the Americans, you know, but they decided on the eagle. Now, why did they decide on? They could have went for a nice turkey, right? People eat, you know, so-called Thanksgiving dinner here, which is Thanksgiving, you know. But why the eagle? Because it was prophecy. Prophecy cannot be broken, man.
That's it.
No matter what you say, or if you don't believe it or not, it don't matter. Prophecy still cannot be broken.
Yep. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars.
Right, and that's another one, another clue. How did they exalt their nest among the stars? Well, back in 1969, actually in the 60s, you had the space race. You know, you had the Russians that sent out the satellite Sputnik, and then you had America that was, you know, they were racing to see who could get to the moon first. Now, guess what? Neither one of them made it to the moon, you know. But the point is that in 1969, America said that they made it to the moon, right? They show you these different, you know, and then back then, you know, people were simple-minded, you know, and they looked at it as, oh, wow, what a great achievement, America, yeah, you know, you went to the moon, and one large step for man and one large step for mankind, however the hell he said that. But coming to find out later on that all that stuff was nothing but a hoax. You know, it was all filmed on the stage that Stanley Kubrick set up for his movie Odyssey, Space Odyssey 2001 or something like that. You know, and this is why he was so damaged by that, you know, and it was like eating at him, you know, because he seemed to be like an honest, you know, like an honest man. What's this guy doing, man? So he's supposed to be over fucking here.
Illegal.
You know, he seemed to be like an honest man, so that shit was eating away at him. So every once in a while, in different movies, he would drop hints on that. You know, like in the movie The Shining, when he had the little boy driving down, and he, you know, had that shirt on with the other symbolisms in the movie. He knew that wasn't true. He knew that whole landing was a hoax. And even when they interviewed these astronauts later on, some of them said, no, we never went to the moon, because it was all bullshit. You know, because if you went to the moon back then and your technology was not that great and crappy, when they going to the moon, there's this technology. They got nanotechnology. They got, you know, all kind of battery packs and all kind of shit. You know, you don't think they would have kept going back and forth to the moon? So it's all bullshit. But when they made that announcement, that's when America started to fall. That was a great decline, because then you had the veterans coming back from Vietnam. You know, they were on, you know, on drugs. You know, the moral standards of family and everything started to be devalued. The economy started to falter. You know, so there was a lot that went on during those times. So read that part again, though.
Yeah, and if I could say this, Elijah came back.
Oh, beautiful.
Which that was the spirit that, you know, which was bringing the truth back, because that's the prophecy.
Yep.
And from that time, he's been on a spiral, a downward spiral.
Straight down.
You know, the truth was being raised up, and he was coming down.
Yeah.
That's Jacob pulling Esau's heel, pulling him out of power.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll read that part again.
Yeah.
Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, and though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, said the Lord. Right.
So from that point on, though, I said, thence will I bring thee down. And when you go back and you know, see what was happening in the late 60s into the 70s until now, you see a total degeneration of America. You know, and that's exactly what took place. So these are clues. in the scriptures. These are prophetic clues in the scriptures as to who this place is talking about, who the Edomites are, because America is being run by the Edomites, you know, in power, so-called power, with the illusion of power, and the ones behind the scenes. And they're using America to manipulate the world. So from that point on, this place started to dwindle, started to go down, because they were on the upward spiral. 1944, the Bretton Woods Agreement, the U.S. dollar became the world reserve currency. America was booming. Everything was good. And now they started on a downward spiral. You went to the moon, really? Which really all they did, that when you said they set the nest amongst the stars, is just put up the satellites up in the upper atmosphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's when the truth started to blossom. Mm-hmm. It says, verse 5, if thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Mm-hmm. Would they have not stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers came to thee, would they not leave some grapes? Yep. How are the things of Esau searched out?
The Lord's going to wipe you out completely. And also, you're being searched out. You are being searched out. Because in your decline, you're also being searched out. The truth is coming out. So it's like it ain't like you had a great empire and it just started to fall and people were like, damn, they were a great empire, but they lost power, they started going down. No. On your downward spiral, it's also being revealed that you're a scumbag. That you're no good. You're no good. Baby, you're no good. You're just rotten to the core. That's why it says, let favor be shown to the wicked, yet will he not learn righteousness. You can't even do right. Look at this shit. You can't even do right, over there in the land of Israel. You got that land polluted. Mm-hmm. Freaked out. Freaker.
Damn. Yeah, he can't do good. He can't even do good to himself.
Right. He's
polluting the same earth that that he lives in. But see, in his mind, we just gonna go to Mars. Damn. You see the movies like Interstellar. Pretty much the earth is all messed up.
Yep.
And what is their fix for that particular reason? That the so-called great white man, right? It's great science. Mm-hmm. Well, his fix is to leave Earth and go somewhere else and do the same thing.
Right.
So he just he's like a virus. He's like a parasite. They just suck until there's nothing left, and then they go to the next host.
That's it.
Yeah,
you had the movie Elysium. The Earth was fucked up. So they had to go where? Up. They had to go up because they know that that's the only way they can get away from the shit that they done destroyed down here.
And that's prophetic too, where they're gonna go up into the heavens, to hide.
Yep.
And when you go into the movie Elysium and you look at that space station, it was in the symbol of the Baphomet. When you look at it, it was a 5-pointed star, which just shows you who they are. It's like it's so many hidden gems that point to Esau, Edom being the devil.
That's it.
Okay. And everything that he's doing, even in his movies, is all prophetic.
Yep.
How he's going to try to go into the caves, right? And then he's always going to try to go into the heavens to hide himself.
Yep.
And the Most High going to take him out of all the place, even the depth, in the deep. Nope. He got underground cities underwater.
Yep.
Okay.
You can't escape prophecy. You can try to go into, this word and that word means this and this word, and then when you go to the extra cheese it, on this theological term and that theological term, it's not going to take away from prophecy. Because all you devils have done is try to corrupt the truth. But the truth is uncorruptible. The truth is undefeated. And although you deceive the world, guess what? That deception is being broken down, lie by lie.
Yeah, and I say that the Most High don't care about the whole world, the deception of the whole world.
Yep.
He's only concerned with his elect.
That's it.
And starting with his elect men, it's a very small number that the Most High has woken up to be at the forefront of taking you down by and exposing you. Mm-hmm. So the Lord don't need all the heathen nations to understand what the hell is going on. He don't care.
All right.
Okay, they're going to understand once the destruction happens.
Yep.
Once Yahushai comes.
Yep.
And then that veil ultimately is going to be opened up. Okay, for the whole world to know. They're going to know who they are. They're going to know who we are. They're going to know the power, the only power. They're going to be put back in their position. Okay, they're what they're going to be doing on the earth, who they're going to be serving.
Yep.
Okay, and they're going to know also who the wicked is and who deceived them.
That's it.
Okay.
And this is what we're heading to right now. And the Lord don't even care about a good portion of the Israelites today. You know, because he only concerned with his elect. This is the only ones he's enlightening to his mysteries and things that are happening prior to them going down.
That's it.
Because those are the ones that's going to be saved. And the way they're going to be saved is by what? By the foolishness of preaching. You know, once the word enters into their mind, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, which is able to save your souls.
That's it. Verse 7, all the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border.
Oh, matter of fact, you know what, Salaki? We wanted to get to the part about the cliffs of the rock. Let's read verse 3 again.
Yep.
I think it was verse 3.
Yep, verse 3.
That was the main point.
Gone, the clefts of the rocks.
Yep.
Yep. This is Obadiah, verse 3. The pride of thy heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock.
And that's a major clue as to who the Edomites are, the cavemen of the earth. This is why when you research the cavemen, they'll tell you 10,000 BC or a million years ago or a billion years ago, because they don't want that history to come out. Because if that history was to come out, the full entirety of that mystery or that truth, then it would condemn these devils as being the Edomites, because they're the only ones with that history. Now you had the Horites, the original inhabitants of the land of Mount Seir, in Edom, right? But they didn't live in those conditions that Esau was subjected to. They don't have the history of the wood woos or the wild man.
Yeah, they're they understood certain things. They are from Abraham, them Ishmaelites.
Yep.
So they have certain customs. There's nobody dirty and nasty like Esau.
Oh man.
Even Elam's nasty and dirty.
Yep.
But Edom is the worst.
Different kind of dirty.
Yeah, he's a different type of vile.
Yeah. And since you mentioned Ishmael, you had during the Khazarian Empire, when these devils were up in the Caucasus Mountains, you had the historians, Muslim historians, and different ambassadors that they were sent to because they were trying to convert the small hats today to Islam, right? It said that when they would have their meetings, they would describe their people. They said that they wore their drawers until they disintegrated off of them. The women would sit there picking lice out of their private parts and all that. It was just a vile, despicable, nasty, disgusting people.
Yeah, the women would be naked. They wouldn't, because men back then, they would do business with each other. The woman was nowhere to be found. They was doing what women were supposed to be doing.
Yep.
Well, Esau, he would bring his woman on. Like, no, you can't talk to me unless my woman's here. And a woman be butt ass naked. And he would get off on you lusting after her, seeing her nakedness.
Nasty.
These are not even a people, man.
Right.
This is the vilest of the earth.
Yep.
These are the base people of the earth, and they're running this society.
Yep.
And you can see that spirit of baseness is upon the whole world. even that's like the spirit of baseness, even upon our people. Yep. Our 2/3 of our people here in America and in different parts of the earth, they have taken on the spirit of baseness, the spirit of Edom.
Yep. So since we read that, since you said that, go to Job. Yep, 30. You can start at the top. Because these scriptures, man, when the Spirit of the Lord, hits and brings them out in the right order, they sting. This is why the devil, wants his truth out of here. This is why that devil vocab Malone. Yeah, I said it. This is why that devil vocab Malone, right, interviewing a couple that used to be ex-IUIC members, right, and somehow, some way, GMS has to end up in the conversation.
Of course.
He's they're telling them how, the problem that she had was because women had to be in order, which is nothing wrong with that. Women had to guide the house. There was a lot of emphasis put in that, which is beautiful, because that's the truth, But then this devil vocab said, we know Christians teach the same thing. That's a good thing, right? He said, but not like GMS. So basically, we're just the worst thing out there.
Good. That's good. We are glad. We are happy that we are the worst thing that the people are speaking about. Here it is. They're demonic, and you got these demons saying that we're demons. That's an actual great honor. You know, that just shows you that we're in the spirit of Yahweh Shai.
Right.
Because that's the same thing that happened to Yahweh Shai.
Yep. They call him Beelzebub. They call him the devil. They said he heals by the devil.
Make that make sense. But that's how warped these people's minds were. And Jake said that.
Yeah.
So they just showed you how low and base Jake's mind is. Yeah. You know, they're just like their father, the devil. They're pretty much like spiritual Edomites in this time.
That's it.
You know?
That's why they can't get it. You know why they can't get it? Because they're too damn wicked. Inside joke.
This is Job 30:1. But now, they that are younger than I have me in derision.
Now, why does it say they that are younger than I? Because Esau is the older, right? Well, the reason why it says younger than I, meaning insignificant. You know, because someone that's younger is supposed to be the insignificant one. Even though he's the older, he's still insignificant. That's why the Lord said he will make him small among the heathen, meaning he would be not, so what I'm looking for, not, trying to think of the word, I don't want to say respected because they so-called respect these devils, but not acknowledged, you know, as being anything. They're really insignificant. That's why they're younger than us. Go ahead. And really, they came later. Go ahead.
But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to have set with the dogs of my flock.
And that's you know, Job knew the manner of these devils. Because matter of fact, before we go into that, go to Genesis 3, and what is that, 14, 15, something like that. You know, you have to understand that Job knew about Esau and about their low state that they were brought to, based off of a curse that was put on the serpent, which was an actual man, which had the spirit of Esau in them. You know, meaning that same spirit that was in them later on came into Cain, and then later on came in through Esau.
And I was a dark, melanated person.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
All right, this is Genesis 3 and 14. And the Lord power said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle.
Right. So you are cursed above all cattle, meaning that you're going to be the lowest, basest person. Stop there. Daniel 4:17, and then we'll come right back to that. You know, you'll be the lowest, basest person on the planet. And these will be the people that the Lord will put into power at the very end. You know, the lowest basis of all the nations is ruling today and has the greater portion of the planet and the most gigantic empire that was ever established on the planet. But they're basemen. Even the Rothschild family's name was Bauer at one time, which means peasant.
Daniel 4:17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basis of men.
So we're dealing with the basis of men right now that are in rulership. So go back. You know, this is why they're, you know, whatever they do as far as etiquette is concerned and how they eat and proper speech and all that, they got all that from Jake. You know, they weren't like that. You know, they were rude. They were beastly. You know, they were animalistic. You know, they were bugged out. This is what the whole caveman, you know, history is all about. You know, just some straight up beasts, beast people.
Well, the Lord likened them unto cattle, which is a beast.
Yep.
You know, so basically you're going to be cursed above all the other heathen. Yep. You're going to be the lowest of the heathen.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, because in the book of Ecclesiastes, the Gawayim, yeah, in the book of Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, it says that the Lord can show the nations that they're just beasts, brute beasts pretty much. They're nothing but beasts. So Esau is the bottom of the barrel of the beast.
No, I can say that. Genesis 3 and 14. It says, and the Lord power said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle.
Yep, so you're going to be the basest, lowest, go ahead.
And above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life.
Meaning, not that you're going to actually eat dust, because serpents don't eat dust. You know, meaning you're going to go to a very low state. When you're crawling on your stomach, you know, or you're down at, that means that you are just at the lowest point. And then the belly also represents the mind. And it says, dust shalt thou eat. What does the dust represent? The dust represents confusion. You know, so you're going to be in a confused state. So when did this happen? This happened during the time when Esau was in the caves, the first time. And even when they were as the Khazars, that was a horrible time too. But the main one was the wild woos, you know, the wild men. You know, that history is covered up. When you see these Edomites, you know, fucking head to toe with hair all over them. Just wild beast like, just they show you movies, but
the werewolf.
Water.
You know?
Yep.
That's Esau.
Yep. He's a low life scumbag.
It's like it.
No, you're good.
For, you know, that image came to, you know,
yeah.
The Sasquatch.
That's it.
You know, that was really easy. I'm fucking around, but that was really Esau.
Yeah.
You know, all that goddamn hair on him. He's a beast now, but he has, you know, he has clippers, and he has, you know, the thing where he can take the laser removal.
Yep.
When you see when you see like an Edomite homeless, you see like he's the closest to his natural state.
Yep.
And they're like, you see Jake that's homeless, Jake still be like clean. You know, of course there'd be certain spirits of uncleanness on Jake too. But Jake will like clean their environment. It'll still look kind of, you know,
some kind of order.
Some type of order. Esau, he's just fucking low. He's just done. You know, that's who we're dealing with.
Yep.
A quick precept going into that. It's Isaiah 47:1. Come down and sit in the dust.
Right.
O virgin daughter of Babylon.
Right, because you were on the throne. You were in a kingly state. But now you're going to come to confusion. You know, and that's exactly what the Lord is going to do. But back then, remember, we have an example in the scriptures of a man that was brought to a beastly state, being a king, Nebuchadnezzar. You know, he was brought down to the level of a beast. The Lord stripped him of his understanding. He put that confused demon on him where he couldn't decipher. You know, here it is. He was the wisest king among the Assyrians, right? But he was brought to a beastly type state where he couldn't even think straight. So the Lord pretty much smote him with madness, you know, and had him in that condition, in that mind state. You know, he had him in that mind state. So the Lord at one time had Esau in that, as a nation, you know, in that mindset. So go back to, unless you had something else.
No, that was it.
Go back to Job. I think it was verse 2, was it?
Job 30 and verse. Oh no, we didn't even finish the whole verse.
Okay.
But now they that are younger than I have me in derision, whose fathers I would have disdained to set with the dogs of my flock.
Right. So Job wouldn't even allow them to sit or sleep around the dogs. You know why? And you know, the elder Kanak was telling me some information that he was researching in a video that he had did a while back. And if you want to,
there's basically, I mean, you can look it up. It's pretty much, you know, like the dog brothels in Europe. Denmark and stuff like that. Bestiality, a heavy sex tourism for bestiality. And they'll have brothels, and they'll break the legs of the dog and cut their not the umbilical cord, but the voice box,
right,
whatever it's called.
So they couldn't
scream.
Yep.
And they'll pop them. And you have people that will go there just for that very reason, but they got it uncovered, you know, in like a data breach, you know, from some hacker hacked into it and discovered it out, and it was a big thing some years back. And then these countries, they went ahead and banned bestiality, but before that it was legal. You could do the research yourself and see, but this is the type of stuff that was going on, and it's still going on, but it's more underground now. You think Esau has stopped that? No. Absolutely not. He kept the party going, because that's in his nature.
Yep.
So Job was like, they were known for this.
Yep.
They were known for popping animals. You know, they were known for, incest.
Yep.
They were known for all these abominable things that even these heathen nations, which are counted as animals and which are counted as nothing, wouldn't even do.
And that's why Job said that I would disdain him to have sit with the dogs of my flock. You're not even worthy. You're not even good enough as a people to sleep with the dogs. That's how low you devils are. And the Lord made you such. Who gonna reply against the Most High? You can't say shit. The Most High made you the devil, and that's what you're gonna be.
Yep. This is Job 30:2. Yea, whereto might the strength of their hands profit me, in whom old age was perished?
Right, because Esau does not bring anything to the table. The only thing Esau brings to the table is death and destruction, thievery, rape,
robbery,
everything that's evil and wicked, and deprives people of stuff. That's what he brings, destruction. He doesn't bring life. He doesn't bring creativity. He steals everything that you see. They'll talk shit about the black civilizations. There were never any civilized black civilizations, so on and so forth. That the white man was the one that, no, motherfucker, you motherfuckers stole every goddamn thing. That's what you're good at. You stole every goddamn thing. And then you made it seem like you were the ones that were in power. Nice. So go ahead.
It says, for want and famine they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste.
Right, because they were ran out there to do what? To fulfill the prophecy that the Lord had put upon them about being brought to that low state, beneath the cattle, beneath, the other animals, go down to that confused state, eating the dust of the earth. That would be your meat, meaning you would be in a confused state. And there's no nation on the planet Earth that has been in that condition more than you so-called white people. All right, you are those cavemen. When I say so-called white people, I'm talking about the Edomites. Go ahead.
Yeah, nationality that you're trying to run away from.
That's it.
But it's hot on your ass. You can't shake it.
Nope.
Because the characteristics of Esau were written in the scriptures. The things that were written aforetime were written for our learning.
Yeah.
So now we can identify each individual according to what the scriptures say, and apply it in the times that we're in. And you have been identified through the Spirit that you are very well the Edomites, and all the characteristics, all the things that the Edomites would be doing. You fit the bill. You fit it perfectly.
Yep.
Okay.
I got a lesson for somebody who wants it. The prophecies are hot on your ass.
That's it.
Go ahead.
For want and famine, they were solitary, fleeing into the wilderness in former time, desolate and waste, who cut up mallows by the bushes and juniper roots for their meat.
Right, which are bitter herbs, and bitter, stuff that kept them alive. Go ahead.
They were driven forth from among men. They cried after them as after a thief.
Because that's all these devils do. The thief cometh not but for to steal, kill, and destroy. He heapeth unto himself all nations. He can never have enough. So the nations got tired of him and ran his ass out. Go ahead.
Among the bushes they brayed. Under the nettles.
When you braying, that's like a donkey, like a horse. So they pretty much were. That was their form of communication, braying like animals, because that's what the Lord brought them down to the point where they didn't even have a spoken language. Their spoken language is grunt.
You're like a beast.
That's it.
Like a beast. All these other nations, they had a language, but the Most High brought you so low to where you don't even have a language anymore. Yep. Remember, Esau, he spoke Hebrew, but the Most High, he took him down, which you're getting ready to go back into that state, Esau.
That's okay. So go ahead, finish that.
It says, among the bushes they brayed, under the nettles they were gathered together. They were children of fools, yea, children of base men.
Right, so you pretty much were reduced to cavemen, cave beasts, cave people, living in caves, being vile. And it says base men. When you look up the word base men, it means men of no name. Meaning that out of all the nations, you're the lowest of the low. We read Daniel 4:17, You know, and that shows you, you know, that you are people of no name. You know, because you really didn't achieve anything on the planet. You know, you say that all other nations that didn't achieve anything, but you're the ones that didn't achieve anything on the planet. You're the ones that didn't contribute to the planet. You took everything from the planet. You know, you took everything from the nations. Created bone in your body. You don't have a building bone in your body. All you do is destroy.
That's it.
What verse was that?
That was verse 8. It says, they were children of fools, yea, children of base men. They were viler than the earth.
Go ahead.
And now am I their song. Yea, I am their byword.
Right. So now here it is. They're the lowest of the low, but somehow they flipped that on us. You know. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
All right. So you got anything else?
That was it. Esau, you going down.
That's it. Esau,
You know?
you're going down. You can't escape prophecy.
It's hot on your ass.
Hot on your ass. So with that, we pray that your brothers and sisters have been edified. Till the next time we say, Shalom.
Shalom.